Hello, I'm the Dark Master, and welcome back to the Kirby Right Back at You Retrospective. In today's episode, we shall be covering episode 20, Dedede Snow Job, or as it's known in the Japanese original, by the far more spoilery name, Goodbye Snowman Chili. Wow, we're already at episode 20, 1/5 of the way done with the series. It feels like yesterday when I started the series covering the pilot. We're making some great progress, and thanks for watching me on this journey. Two more things before we start with the plot, though. Firstly, this is meant to be a Christmas-esque episode, but wasn't released in December. The episode was released on February 16th, 2002, while in America, it was released in November 9th, 2002. And on the subject of the episode's title, yes, it's a reference to a certain sexual act. If you expect me to make a joke about it, I'm not that clever or immature. Also, can you just imagine how painful it would be to do one, considering that birds have beaks? I don't know, it just sounds like they'd bite it off, if you know what I mean. Anyway, let's start with the plot now. As the episode opens, right off the bat, we see a change between the two versions. In the Japanese original, the camera pans downwards from the top of a tree towards the bottom. The English tube removes this camera pan and just opens to a shot of the same tree. The camera then pans to a shot of the beach. I like the sort of visual effect that simulates heat waves. It's a sizzling attention to detail, you could say. There we see Tiff collecting more seashells as she likes to do. Folofala and Honey are building a rather humble sandcastle, while Tough, Spikehead, Iroh, and Kirby are swimming a race, with a little pink puffball being the last. A medium-sized wave throws the poor baby onto the beach, where he weakly keeps trying to swim, much to the enjoyment of the other kids. We then see the camera pan up from the beach towards Dedede's castle. In the Japanese version, the camera zooms in on it slightly before cutting to Escargoon, attempting to cool off King Dedede. The English dub removes this zoom in for unknown reasons, likely to save time. Regardless, we see Escargoon is busy using a large fan to fan Dedede, who, due to being a penguin, the king is not enjoying the summer heat wave. Escargoon is not doing a good job, suffering from the heat himself. I can only assume that the AC unit is broke because we do see that he has one in future episodes. Tired of the snail's pathetic attempts at fanning, Dedede grabs it and, in a bout of ego, uses the fan and shows off how to really fan. He brags about how great he is with everything, only to realize he's accidentally been doing Escargoon's job for him. And when he realizes this, he hits Escargoon over the head, with him declaring that he's sick of this heat and he's going to do something to cool it down. After the intro, there's a star iris wipe, but it's significantly shortened in the English dub. We then see King Dedede complaining to the enemy sales guy about the heat wave. In the Japanese original, he goes so far as to say the enemy sales guy is behind the heat wave, which is silly. He just is a sales guy. I mean, this is just the natural weather of Dreamland, dude. In either case, the enemy sales guy, after some dialogue, says he just may have something that can do the job. Dedede then orders it, and via the power of reused animation, we see the monster of the week. Here is none other than Ice Dragon, who was a Kirby boss that first appeared in Kirby's Dreamland 2, and would have doppelgangers of himself show up in Kirby's Dreamland 3 and Kirby 64. We even see a holographic version of him in Kirby's Planet Robobot, summoned by the Holo Defense AI. Before he finally returned in the flesh in Team Kirby Clash, nearly 24 years later since his initial appearance. Interestingly, the Ice Dragon also showed up in the anime's pilot, albeit briefly. In terms of appearance, it has changed slightly, for in the games, he has a light bluish teal skin with blue back spikes and a stubby tail. In the pilot, its colors become more saturated, with the teal being darker and more green, and the belly being more yellowish tan. Its tail also becomes more curvy. The final design in the anime appears to have been further refined with some minor altercations. Firstly, in the anime, the tail is back to its normal stubby form. The color palette is even more saturated, and the back spikes are now yellow. Honestly, it's not that much of an issue though. I did think the blue spikes worked better for the sake of color theory alone. It also has a purple tongue. Overall, the Ice Dragon made an amazing transition to the anime really well. But it did have some minor nitpicks that you might notice if you're like me. Also, for those wondering, he has no voice actor, just making generic stock kaiju sounds from the Godzilla films. Dedede and Escargoon are shocked and slightly appalled to see how minuscule Ice Dragon is. Dedede and Escargoon are slightly disappointed, and the king picks up the little fellow in his hand. In the Japanese original, he says it doesn't look like ice, whereas in the English dub, he says it looks like a carnival prize. Either version is perfectly insulting. Triggered by the king's words, the Ice Dragon demonstrates his power by freezing the top half of Dedede's body. Escargoon tries to get the little bugger off, but the monster scares him into doing a dab, and the Ice Dragon, despite being a baby, displays amazing acrobatics, like jumping several dozen feet and running with incredible speed into the horizon. Escargoon comments on this quickness of the Ice Dragon, while Dedede frees himself and grabs the binoculars to see the dragon running away. We then cut to Cappy Town as we see Chief Bookums and Professor Curio sitting on the bench in the shade, resting from all the heat, with Professor Curio complaining about sweat in his mustache, which just sounds gross. The two pause when they notice the arrival of red dragonflies, which, for those curious, in Japan, red dragonflies of the genus Sympterum emerge in the autumn and are considered to symbolize autumn, obviously, and the transformation of death. Interestingly, Native Americans thought that they were the souls of the dead. In the English dub, there was an additional sound effect to accompany this in order to emphasize the cooling temperatures. It's a fine addition, especially considering that most people who are not in Japan will not understand the significance of red dragonflies. The sky also begins to darken as Chief Bookums asks if it was a cold break. We then cut to the mayor's house as we see leaves are going all orange. Now, just a few things. Firstly, For those curious, cold weather does not actually cause deciduous trees to lose their leaves. Rather, it's a decrease in the daily sunlight. So it's really a time of year thing. But this is an understandable mistake that many people make. The mayor comments on the falling leaves as his wife walks out and asks what is happening, as he agrees. We then cut to the beach as clouds cover the tropical sky and the water becomes rapidly colder. As Tiff explains, it's a cold front. The sky continues to darken as the kids leave the ocean, and looking up at the clouds, it begins to snow. Kirby catches a piece, and it melts in his hand, much to his enjoyment, whereas Tuff says the rain is frozen, indicating it probably has never snowed here before. We then cut to a view of the castle, where we see Tiff researching what this white stuff is, as her mom complains about the cold. Tiff finally figures out the obvious, that it's snow, explaining how snow works. We then cut to a shot of a balcony, with Meta Knight and his two fellow knights. Interestingly, thanks to the Japanese version, we learn that Cappytown / the wider Dreamland area is in the southern hemisphere of Planet Popstar. This is interesting and does explain a few things in the wider series, like how Dedede is here, despite being a penguin. This was sadly removed in the English dubs, which sucks to be honest, since it was a nice little detail, and it was just replaced by a vague mention about the climate, which didn't even need to be done, honestly. We then cut to the next day, where we see Tiff, Tuff, Folo, Fala, Sir Ibram, and Ladylike peering over the now snow-covered Cappytown. The English dub speeds this up, likely to better fit into the animation time restrictions of America. We then see the mayor, his wife, Spikehead, Iroh, Honey, Gus, Chef Kawasaki, Samo, Mabel, Curio, Dr. Yabui, Melman the Mailman, Chief Bookums, and his wife, all reacting to the snow, and by gosh, the music! The Japanese music has to be some of the most Christmassy but genuinely good music. It's just so pure. The English dub, of course, sadly replaces with some Hanna-Barbera wannabe trite. This is one of the few instances where I actually care about the music differences, because the Japanese version is just so excellent, as you heard before. We then cut to Kirby's snow-drenched house, as we see the cute little baby cuddling with a horrid bird Takori. We see that Tuff is pelting the windows with snowballs, as both Kirby and the indignant Takori wonder what is going on. Kirby is hit by a snowball. There was a line cut from the English dub that is so meaningless I barely even remembered it. Tuff offers to Kirby to come on and join him in the snowy fun, to which, after a bit of clumsy hesitation, including falling on his face, Kirby happily joins in to it. As the pair run off, a grumpy, no-good Takori stays in his bed, saying snow is for penguins. This is, of course, a very ignorant statement, considering that many birds outside of penguins experience snow in their natural lives, and not all penguins live in cold habitats, you darn bigot. We then cut to the mayor taking a picture of the town's residents in front of snow. In the Japanese original, he claims it's for remembering snow, something they'd never seen before and likely wouldn't see again, though having watched the entire series, yeah, they do see it again. In the English dub, instead, he says it's for a Christmas card, which, if Christmas exists, does that mean Jesus is canon to Kirby?
I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
In either case, The mayor doesn't get his picture as a snowboarding curio sleds right into him. Apologizing, he explains that Waddle Dees are handing out snowboards as we see a line of cappies all going up a tall snow hill to snowboard, as we see King Dedede snicker about his success. Tiff and her father walk up, seeing the whole affair. Tiff is skeptical, while her father says that the weather is a refreshing change. We then see Tuff snowboarding down the icy slopes, followed by Kirby. The pair are enjoying himself while Tiff says the snow makes no sense considering the climate, while her brother pulls an Ethan Klein and says to don't think about it and enjoy herself, and the two run off, leaving Tiff concerned. That is cut short when she, turning to hear Dedede yelling avalanche as the prick buries her in snow alongside Escargoon. The two say she should be enjoying herself, to which Tiff accuses the dastardly duo of causing the snow, to which the pair rather pathetically attempt to deny. Dedede then throws Escargoon's snowboard at her and tells her to enjoy herself. Tiff is greatly annoyed, but stops when she hears Meta Knight, the Star Warrior, say they must be patient to figure out what is going on. Tiff says Dedede is behind this, to which Meta Knight agrees while making a blowjob reference. But let's just move on. We then cut to Kirby enjoying a snowboard ride. He's enjoying it at first until he loses control and is sent flying over a gorge and lands rolling into a snowball, coming to a stop right next to what is, let's say, the guest character of the episode, Chili. Since this is his first appearance in the episode, let's cover him now. Chili is actually an older enemy than Ice Dragon, first appearing in Kirby's Adventure. In terms of appearance, in the game, he's a snowman with very prominent bushy eyebrows, one of the few things in the franchise to have them, two coal black eyes, and a bucket that serves as a fez, plus a collar with a bell on it. The anime is pretty faithful, but it changes the bucket to the color green, and the collar becomes a dark maroon as opposed to a regular red. This would actually become a palette swap in later games following the release of the anime. He is voiced by Yuko Mizutani in the Japanese, who does a perfectly fine job. The English dub is a bit more lively though, thanks to veteran voice actress Casey Rogers, who also voiced many Pokemon characters extensively, plus a Baroness from G.I. Joe. Much like the Ice Dragon, Chili makes a very cool transition to the anime. It's quite nice, you could say. An interesting change I want to mention at this point is that all the times Kirby says snow were replaced with Puyo in the dub. Honestly, that's fine. The less he speaks, the better, and it makes the few times he does speak more evident. Tuff asks the obvious question if Chili is indeed made out of snow, to which Chili nods and says yes. Kirby, ecstatic to meet a new friend, and says his name multiple times. Tuff is skeptical of a talking snowman, as we all should. Tiff sees the trio walking by and sleds over to them, seeking to meet the new stranger. Though he scares her a bit unintentionally. Skeptical, she asks where he came from, and Chili points to the sky. At least the best he can considering he has no fingers. Tiff points out snowmen are created. They don't fall out of the sky, and is a bit suspicious, but says anything is possible. This is interrupted when she gets hit in the head with a snowball by Spikehead, as he and Iroh both challenge the three to a snowball fight, to which Tiff stays out while all the other kids play. Kirby tries to make a snowball and runs to throw it, but gets hit with another one and falls backwards. And then, when he gets pelted multiple times, he runs to get a breather, relocating himself to beneath a tree to make more snowballs. Chili watches and looks ominously as some icicles and summons a snowball to try and pierce Kirby. The first one misses because Kirby moves out of the way. Chili tries again this time, but hits all the icicles. Yet out of nowhere, an out of control Dedede happens to unintentionally save the pink puffball, which is kinda ironic. Kirby is pushed aside as a concerned Tiff runs up to him and then says Chili tried to hurt Kirby, but the two wander off as Kirby still remains friends with the murderous snowman. The two arrive at a frozen lake. Chili, seeing Kirby is distracted by his reflection, pushes Kirby onto the lake. Though Kirby is enjoying sliding on the ice, not at all scared. Meanwhile, Tiff watches the pair with an inner monologue about her lack of trust for Chili. Chili joins Kirby on the ice and jumps up, much to Kirby's initial applause. Then he jumps again, causing Kirby to fall into the freezing lake. Tiff runs over. However, due to the cracking ice, Chili also falls into the lake. Kirby initially tries to save himself. However, being of pure heart and innocence, he goes back to rescue Chili, pulling him out of the lake. Tiff arrives to see Kirby trying to heal the more mushy, nearly dead Chili. Tiff, being a friend to Kirby, helps him heal Chili by throwing ice on him. Tiff then lambasts the sneaky snowman after he recovers for trying to drown Kirby, but the pink puffball defends Chili from her. Looking up to his snowman friend, Chili's eyes widen and blink. The English dub sped up the blink for some reason, likely to better fit within time schedules. We then cut to that night, where we see the wretched bird Takori yelling at Kirby for putting out the fire so that Chili could stay in their house. Takori makes an ultimatum to Kirby, in that either he leaves or Chili leaves. Kirby, realizing that a questionable snowman is still better than the wretched bird, he decides on Chili, and the evil bird flies out. Kirby looks out into the night as we get an excellent shot of the snow-covered dreamland at night. Meanwhile, Chili looks at Kirby, still knowing what he must do, though there's some conflict in his eyes. We then cut to Tiff's room, where we see her freaking out that the lazy bird Takori left Kirby alone with Chili. The two kids run off, allowing Takori to be in their room, which he doesn't deserve, and they go to help Kirby. While at least Takori is gone for the rest of the episode. We then cut to a sleeping Kirby. Chili stands over him, summoning an icicle in his hand, ready to kill him, but pauses when he sees Kirby sleep turn to him. In the Japanese original, Kirby says Chili in his sleep. In the English dub, it removes this, and I have to say, that weakens the scene a lot. They should have left that in, honestly. We see Tiff and Tuff running towards Kirby's house. They see a slightly saddened Chili outside with an icicle dagger, hopping away, Fearing for the worst, the two bust in, but see a perfectly fine Kirby in his bed. Tiff explains they thought Chili hurt Kirby, while trying to warn him about the snowman's danger. But Kirby, not one to give up on a friend, goes out and chases after his snowman friend, despite Tiff's pleading for him to stop. The two run after him as we see something is blasting snow into the air. This is revealed to be Ice Dragon, having matured into a much larger adult form, now with more yellow spikes, angry eyebrows, and prominent teeth. There's an added commercial break in the English dub when he's revealed. Didn't really mind it, especially considering the re-uploads on YouTube cut out all the commercials. We see Dedede telling Ice Dragon off for Chili's failure, implying Chili was created by the behemoth. He then lambasts Chili for his inaction. Tiff, Tuff, and Kirby arrive, hiding behind a rock the monster could easily see over but doesn't. Tiff explains the obvious, with how Ice Dragon caused this unnatural winter weather, but before they can come up with a plan, Dedede orders Ice Dragon to kill Chili. But Kirby, being the good guy he is, jumps to push Chili out of danger. Dedede, realizing Kirby is here, sicks Ice Dragon on him. In what is the final scene change of the episode, in the Japanese original, after Kirby dodges Ice Dragon's initial attack, we see some trees getting frozen by Ice Dragon's breath. It's actually a pretty good indication of the foe's power. It was sadly removed in the English dub, and I'm not quite sure why. Tiff says they gotta end this, and tells Kirby to suck it up, and Kirby tries to inhale the large behemoth. But of course, the dragon is far too large, and instead breathes at Kirby, which he eats but only makes him cold. This is weird, for a reason we'll get to soon. The kids cheer Kirby on, but they catch the attention of the Ice Dragon, who spits a CGI giant razor-sharp snowflake at the pair. Why exactly, I don't know. His normal attacks seem perfectly fine. The two kids are about to get sliced in half when Mexican Meta Knight arrives and saves them. Knowing much about Kirby, he tells the pink puffball to inhale the large snowflake. He does so, and we're introduced to a new combi ability. So, this is Ice Kirby, marking his first appearance in the anime. He first appeared in Kirby's Adventure, where he's simply a blue recolor of the basic Kirby sprite. Kirby Superstar introduced the basic design used for the anime, with the crown of ice crystals and blue color scheme, but the anime did tweak a few things that would become standard in later iterations. Firstly, his cheeks are no longer blue, but a purplish pink. The gem is no longer a round orange orb, but a six-pointed snowflake, sapphire, and he now has a visor blue. In terms of abilities, he can shoot ice, see breath. It's a great transition, and I think it's a darn shame that this design did not last long after the anime, losing the visor and eventually the blue coloration. Returning to the plot, we see what is either an animation error or a continuity error, because when Meta Knight introduces Ice Kirby, Tiff and Tuff are sporting festive Christmas scarves, which they weren't wearing in the rest of the episode, especially not previously. Ice Kirby then tries to face Ice Dragon, but as Dedede points out, the great beast's blubber makes it ice-proof, at least on the outside. After rubbing itself a bit, the Ice Dragon begins shooting more of those big snowflakes and bumbles Kirby around. Meta Knight says Kirby has to freeze the beast from within, as Chili listens from behind some trees. Dedede and Escargoon cheer Ice Dragon on, but are cut short when Frosty steals the king's snowmobile. We see the Ice Dragon approaching Kirby as Chili picks him up right on time to save him from the snowflakes. While they're preparing to attack, in what is the final script change between versions, Kirby says Chili in the original, while the English dub sadly removed this again, which is just a crying shame because it does add a little character between them, and I think it was a mistake to remove all mentions of Chili's name. That's just weird. The pair ride off as they go via a snow hill onto the ice dragon's head, with Chili ramming the dragon's face as Kirby falls down its black stomach and begins freezing the ice dragon from the inside. I guess the dragon is either too stupid to close its mouth or the force is just too great and he can't help but keep it open. Regardless, he slowly freezes solid. Dedede and Escargoon run over to the frozen fiend and pray in vain that the ice dragon is okay, but it matters not as it shatters, burying the king and Escargoon in a pile of frozen chunks of meat. Absolutely disgusting. The weather, without the influence of the ice dragon, begins to heat up, and I want to call BS for a second. Let me explain. Firstly, while yes, it could be made the argument that the sudden appearance of snow might seem to be as ridiculous as it's suddenly melting. But here's the thing. If we assume that the snow was made magically, it appearing in the first place wouldn't be that unusual. However, considering that without the magical influence it's just regular snow, then even if he disappeared, i.e. died, it would still take a few days for the snow to melt. I mean, my home state of Mississippi has a semi-tropical thing, and it still takes like, I don't know, up to like 3 or 4 days after the snow appears for it to fully melt. So I just think it's ridiculous that it melts this quickly. I mean, there must be some serious global warming going on here. Regardless, we see much of the snow melt, reverting Dreamland to its old tropical green self, as we see King Dedede and Escargoon napping, apparently knocked out, as Meta Knight walks off into the distance. Tiff and Tuff are joyous at the return of Dreamland's proper weather, but they pause for a moment when they see Kirby looking at Chili's bucket hat. It is revealed that Chili is slowly melting and dying. Kirby, however, is desperate and picks up Chili in his hat and runs to a northward bound glacier and, after a great deal of effort, including ignoring the cries of his friends, puts the dying snowman on it in a last-ditch attempt to save Chili's life, and it's actually kind of sad. He puts down the now minuscule Chili and waves one last goodbye as Kirby puts the large hat on Chili in a futile attempt to save Chili from melting into nothingness. The glacier slowly melts again, a bit too fast if we actually think about it, as we see Tiff and Tuff row out on a boat after Kirby. They get him as Kirby calls out for Chili forlorn, as Tiff says it's too warm in Dreamland for a snowman like Chili to survive. I guess nobody has a freezer or anything to keep him in until the next winter. As we see, Chili's hat and collar sink into the dark abyss. Now, the Japanese original implies that he may reform in the north, but nah, he's dead. I mean, we see his body parts sink into the abyss. I'm pretty sure we can say he's dead. And the episode ends with Kirby jumping out of the raft. Now let's cover the positives, negatives, and my final thoughts. In terms of positives, I like how Kirby and the rest of the cast's reaction toward the snow. It's just so adorable to see Kirby interacting with Ice, and the other people's reactions were well within character, and I thought were well done. Ice Kirby was well done, especially thought it was interesting to me that he had to get inside Ice Dragon to freeze him. That was actually kind of interesting because you think they would just freeze him, but they had to actually go in. They remember that polar animals actually have blubber, and so ice isn't really their weakness. And speaking of Ice Dragon, he was an excellent villain of the week, and it's always nice to see enemies from the games. Chili was a good part of the episode, and even with the limited voice acting, he does get quite a bit of character. And the fact that he starts off a monster but gradually redeems himself is something that was rarely seen in the anime. Though, thanks to that, we get one of the only major flaws I have with the episode. You see, they being that they try to do something that Pet Peeve did better. And while as a kid I did cry at the end of this episode, much like I did with that episode, but I just didn't this time. I think it lacked the innocence that Pet Peeve did. I mean, the fact that Chili actually does try to hurt Kirby, unlike the robot dog, even though his death is sad, it's not quite cry inducing anymore. My only other minor complaint would be that the change in music in certain scenes was not that good. I mean, I don't mind the music in general in either versions, but definitely there were some Christmassy sounds that were just better than what the dub replaced them with. I will say, even though I made the point that his death was probably not as well done, is definitely more gruesome though. I mean, consider instead of a quick explosive death, it's a slow gradual death of melting, which just sounds horrible if you really think about it outside the context of a snowman. Overall, despite its rather subpar ending, I will say that I can recommend this episode as it's pretty cool. Definitely a nice one. Give it a watch if you can. I'm the Dark Master, and join me next time on the Kirby Right Back at Ya Retrospective.